All right, let's move forward. Second to last New Year's Six bowl game that we have on tap here. We have the Orange Bowl. Maybe a little bit of a sensitive subject for some. If you are a Florida State fan, you may want to scrub forward. We have number 6 Georgia. I have minus 17.5 written in front of me. I'm not kidding. I wrote this an hour and a half ago. We're at 19.5 now. Georgia's a 19.5 point favorite over Florida State in a New Year's Six bowl game. And the over-under is just 44.5. Not great. I have like an implied score thing down here. That's all jacked up too. But either way, this game kicks off Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern on ESPN from Hard Rock Stadium. We've talked about the FSU thing already. My fear that we talked about in that video is coming to fruition. Getting left out of the CFP was not a motivator for this team. It was fully defeating. They're going to be without 9 starters. Most recently, Tate Rodemaker, who was going to be their starter, he decided to hit the transfer portal. Brock Glenn is now going to be the starter. Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, Jaheim Bell out, Trey Benson's out. On defense, Jared Verse and 3 other starters. Georgia actually had a surprising number of transfers. I guess you don't win a title in Athens, so you just jump ship. I don't know. It was mostly rotational guys, but not all. Jamon Dumas Johnson, biggest name. Massive loss for Georgia. He's in the portal. That, to me, was very surprising. And, of course, there's a lot of reasons that these kids transfer. It could be not a culture fit. It could be position a lot of things. That one was very surprising to me. Now, Carson Beck, the quarterback, will return next year. That's a big deal, I think. That's a lot of continuity on here. We're also TBD on guys like Brock Bowers, Amarius Mims, Javon Bullard. Like 5 or 6 early round NFL guys are still in flux here. If the Georgia guys opt out, we're talking about Sun Bowl levels of personnel absences for this game. Again, though, keeping Carson Beck, I think, is the biggest thing in this game for either team. The line climbed from minus 14 to 17 to 17.5 to 19.5, and it hasn't looked back. I said it before, I think that this could get ugly. I'm not laying this number now. Are you kidding me? At 44.5, I'm not laying 19.5 points. If I'm looking for Georgia to, if I'm thinking about backing Georgia, I'm probably taking over 44.5 points rather than the number, because that's something that could be backdoored. I mean, we're creeping up on 3 touchdowns now against a team that's still top 5 by the committee's mark. Either way, Georgia likely takes being excluded from the playoff, rightfully so. Very personally, I trust Kirby Smart over Mike Norvell. So yeah, that's why I think I would take over 44.5 rather than back Georgia. In a real worst case scenario, I'm not saying this is how the game is going to go, but in a worst case scenario, Georgia covers that number completely by themselves. Just keep that in mind. They have the potential to do that. I don't really know if it involves the players or if this involves the players so much, but I also don't love the distraction from Florida State's lawsuits and all that stuff. It's noise. It's distracting. I don't think the players look at it and are really all that affected by it. But, man, Florida State right now I'm staying very, very far away from this team.
Yeah, I'm staying away from all the lawsuits. They're flying left and right against everybody that has a pulse, it seems. It's interesting.
Whoever will listen.
Right. You talked about the transfer portal. And like I talked about earlier, I don't blame any player that opts out. You do what's right for you. Same thing with the transfer portal. Hey, it's made available to you, and now we've got another exception where you can transfer multiple times, not sit out a year. It's available to you. You're just playing the game, the rules of the game that's in front of you. I don't blame you. Go find the best opportunity for you, the best position for you, your family, whatever it is. Go for it. Coaches, when you get at cruising altitude, that's where Georgia is. Georgia's at cruising altitude. I know they're not playing on the CFP this year. They're at cruising altitude. And it's tricky because you don't want to go on total autopilot, because if you do, you'll quickly fall off that perch on the mountaintop. That's why Nick Saban's so good. He just doesn't allow his program to – they reach cruising altitude, but he keeps it in full gear, and they're cruising at that gear. Georgia's hit that too, and that's where they're going with Kirby Smart. When you hit cruising altitude, the transfer portal, the in, the out – okay, all right, see you. We're going to bring someone else in who, by the way, he's going to be just as good, if not better than you that just left. So I'm not diminishing any of the people that they're losing in the portal. You never want to lose people. But when you're at Georgia, it's okay, next, come on in. So Georgia's going to be right back where they were next year again. So it'll be interesting to see. But that's just, the transfer portal is so interesting because depending on where you are in the hierarchy of college football, it has a different meaning for you. And we see that in multiple sports too, right? In my day job, men's and women's basketball is our primary sports, most prominent sports. We see the transfer portal impact them very differently than maybe a Georgia or an Alabama, Ohio State, whatever. Much like Ohio State, Georgia's season defined by an ill-timed loss to a rival. If Georgia loses any other game this year, any other game, and then beats Alabama in Atlanta, we're sitting here talking about how the Dogs are likely favorites to pull off the sport's first three-peat since Minnesota in the mid-1930s, 90 years ago. That's the last time we saw a three-peat, and we were that close to seeing an opportunity to do it here. That's the beauty of the 4-team college football playoff. Any given loss just might be the dagger that dashes your biggest dreams. That's what we're giving up starting next year. But for this year, this is the, quote, worst Georgia team since the COVID-disrupted 2020 season. Never mind the fact that 2021 and 2022 Dog teams were among the best to ever play this game.
Yeah.
This Georgia team is incredibly talented, despite not being the same level of the last 2 years. They rank number 5 on offense, number 6 on defense, and number 5 overall in my power ratings. If both teams were at full strength here, Brett, clearly they are not. If both teams were at full strength, my model would favor Georgia by just 4 points, and this would be an absolute must-see Orange Bowl. Obviously, both teams are not at full strength, and that's largely on the Florida State side, as you outlined. I'm not going to rehash the injustice that was done to Florida State. I really don't care what you say, how you rationalize it. The Seminoles should have been in the playoff, period. They aren't. Here we are. From a power rating standpoint, the Noles are number 11 in my model at full strength. The offense was number 7 when Jordan Travis got injured. They've fallen to number 19 in just a few games without him. That much movement this late in the year when you've built up so much in-season data, that's a long way to fall. So clearly not having Jordan Travis does make a huge difference for this offense. With Rodemaker, who is not playing, as you said, we're probably looking at a top 30, 35 unit on the offensive side. And again, if they're playing in the playoff, he's going to be playing. That's probably good enough. When you have a defense like the Noles do, this unit started number 19 in August, and they only got better as the season progressed, ending at a season-best number 5. With 2.8 more regular season wins than projected, Florida State finished number 13 on my overachievers list. At full strength, this defense is legit, and this Noles team is the best we've seen in Tallahassee since Jameis Winston won the Heisman and lifted the crystal ball in the final game of the BCS era during that 2013 season. Brett, we will never again see a non-CFP bowl game involving 2 teams that have a combined 1 loss.
Yep. I'm with you, and we probably shouldn't have seen it in the first place. But either way, I do want to talk about Brock Glenn really quickly because we have seen him in action against a very good Louisville defense. Louisville's defense is not Georgia's defense, and Brock Glenn went 8 for 21 for 55 yards. Johnny Wilson had 2 receptions for 21 yards. Keon Coleman, 4 for 19. Trey Benson, 2 for 15. Brock Glenn is playing without any of those 3 people. So now he is playing in a game with receivers he did not complete a pass to in the ACC championship game. So, yeah. I'll take over 44.5 just on the prospect that Georgia blows the doors off him rather than taking the number. But Florida State's in trouble. Mm-hmm. Clip this and put on freezing cold takes, whatever you want to do. That's fine. But Florida State's in trouble.